Welcome, everyone, to this compliance curated online session by Impero. Today, we're going to be talking about AI and financial compliance and controlling, and we're very honored today to have some special guests with us from Basico. But before we jump into introducing our guests, I did just want to give you a quick little introduction. So, if you're not familiar with Impero, we are a risk and internal controls platform really focused on the promise of compliance, especially within finance, tax, and beyond. We got a great platform. We're not here to talk about that today, but we got a great platform that helps you document your risks, helps you set up mitigating controls, and also helps you report on the progress as well as test. But the reason we're here today is to have a great session with our speakers. And before I let them introduce themselves, I did just want to explain a little bit about the concept and why we decided to host these compliance curated sessions online. It's been a big thing at Impero to get our customers together, make sure that people are sharing knowledge, to make sure that they're networking. And it is simply because you get inspiration from your peers. Earlier this year, we hosted our first really big flagship event called Compliance Curated, where we did exactly that. We had different panel discussions, we had different experts coming in to share ideas and inspiration. And one of the things that we wanted to do was bring that concept online so that people can join no matter where you are in the world, and also watch on demand if you're not able to join us live. So we launched it in person, but now we're bringing it online, and this is our very first session. And the whole thought is just to bring the brightest ideas together so that we can continue to talk about and explore how we can continue to improve the risk control and compliance space. And of course, we had to start out with one of the hottest topics. I was at the Risk Europe conference a couple weeks ago in London, and I think every single booth had some kind of AI claim as well. And I know it's something that we talk a lot about with our customers as well with prospects. And so I thought who better to invite today, apart from Lasse and Mess, and I'll let them really quickly introduce themselves. So Lasse, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Yes, I can do that. I am Lasse Rindum. I am the AI lead at Basico, which means I am responsible for conceptualizing and contextualizing AI into the offerings that we're offering to especially the CFO market, which is the strategic focus group or focus area for everything below the CFO umbrella is the specific focus for Basico. In addition, I also, as part of my job, as part of what I do, I host a podcast called The Only Constant, where I speak to global leaders on AI, and I'm sort of halfway, I think, renowned voice in AI, at least in Denmark, and a little bit beyond as well.
Awesome. And we're so excited to have you. And we're going to share a link to your podcast as well later if anyone's interested in checking that out. And Mess?
Yes, hello everyone, and thank you for having us, Jasmine. I'm Mads Björkman. I'm a director in CFO services at Basico. I mainly work with our finance transformations at our clients, and I have a finance background. So what I really do is work with change and also have the knowledge from how controlling is working. And I've teamed up with Lasse regarding this AI to have the technical background and the insights from Lasse, combining with my knowledge for the commercial side, how finance is working, and also taking this perception of change, because AI will be a huge change for a lot of companies, and that requires some kind of implementation and also getting to know the technology and also getting used to work with it. So we believe that we have the teamed up to combine different worlds.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. And by the way, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Jasmine Hansen de Guzman. I'm the marketing director here at Impero, and I'm the one who has been helping shape these events and also had invited Lasse and Mess to our in-person event, which is where I could see that they were really getting into some great conversations with the attendees on this session. And that's exactly why I wanted to bring it online here today. I do also just want to do a little disclaimer that Basico is a partner of Impero's. So while Impero does provide a great technology platform for the risk and internal controls, Basico is a great partner on helping to work with different companies on the risk and control frameworks as well. And that is also why we decided to invite you guys here today. But before we kick it off and jump into the discussion, I do just also want to go through a couple of quick practical housekeeping for all of you on the line. So just so you know, this is being recorded. So if you want to rewatch this or if you want to share it for whatever reason afterwards, you'll you'll get a follow-up email where you'll get the recording, and you'll also get a link to the slides, as well as Les's podcast, as well as a really great catalog that we're going to be talking about a little bit that Mess and Les have put together. Oh yeah, we can see the physical
No
copy.
one can see it because it's blurry. Sorry about that.
That's the joy of doing live webinars, right? But there's a great catalog, so we'll share that as well because we're going to talk a little bit about that. So don't worry, don't fret if we're talking about something and referencing it. You're going to get a copy of it. We do also have time dedicated at the end for Q&A. So do make sure to throw your questions into the Q&A panel here in Zoom, but we'll address all the questions at the end. But as you think of them, feel free to put them in as we go along. But before we jump into it, we love to start, and if you've ever joined any of our webinars before, we love to start with a poll and get you guys a little bit engaged. So this should be popping up on your screen in just a second. And what we would just want to hear about is, how do you expect Gen AI to change your job? And Mess was just saying he thinks there's going to be a big change, but do you think it's going to be fewer manual tasks and more analysis, same workload but different tasks? More work, but new tools just being adopted to your old processes? No real change, maybe. Or will there be more complexity because you need to take other things into account, for example, GDPR and data privacy when it comes to it? So I'm going to leave that open for a little bit, but I can see so far most people think fewer manual tasks and more analysis. About 67, almost 70% of you think that. And of course, it's not that one's exclusive to the other. But we're going to leave that open for a real quick second. All right, I'm going to close that and share the results. So Mess, Lessa, feel free to comment as well, but it seems like most people think fewer manual tasks, more analysis. Is this also what you guys see when you're out talking to clients and doing workshops and consulting?
Well, I think that it's really, the thing is, right, fewer manual tasks. We always expect more simplicity. I actually like the second one best. That's the one I would have answered, because I think you're going to be seeing that you're going to be doing sort of, working the same hours, putting in the same effort, but you're going to get more output. So maybe it should have been, same workload, but more output. And I've discussed this also on my podcast, that are we making the world simpler or slightly more complex, but for a greater output? And I think the output part is really important. We can do more, we can have control over more, we can produce more. But we also, in the end, AI is also an added layer of complexity that I think we need to realize as well. Always dream about this simplicity, robots doing everything. I just think we need to have, a balanced view of what we're trying to achieve. Are we trying to achieve speed and not working, or are we trying to achieve better and more? And I think that that's really, we need to focus on either or.
Definitely, definitely. Let's jump to
I think this is a very positive takeout. That normally when Lasse and I are now talking about AI, we always get, well, would this have any change, or will it just be more complex? So I think this is a very positive way of thinking. So it's promising for our session here.
I think
Definitely.
that's a great point, because I know when we were doing like a prep session for this, you guys were talking about there's a lot of people who don't think there'll be change, or they're worried about it because it's complexity. So there's more complexity added. But it's great to see so many of you on the line who have such a positive mindset to it. And that's exactly what we're here to explore today. We have one more quick little poll, and that's going to be popping up in just a second as well. And that is, of course, what skill tree level best matches your team right now? Are you still at the point where you're digitizing? And there's no shame in that, right? There are so many companies that we talk to, and I'm sure Mess and Less are the same for you guys, where they're still working with spreadsheets or files being manually sent back and forth via email. That is totally normal. There's some who have implemented some level of automation. Some people are using potentially Copilot or other AI that your organization's implemented. Some of you might already have examples of integrated workflows. And then there's a lot of, I think, organizations who have the end goal of being really fully AI augmented, but it's probably not the reality. I at least haven't seen any.
Let's wait and see for the poll, Jasmine. Maybe they're
Yeah,
all like, yeah, augmented finance already. Whoa, okay.
yeah.
We surprised us, right?
I know. And then we're going to want to call that person afterwards and find out how they did it and bring
What
them
did
on
you
to
do?
the next webinar, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. All right. I think we got a good split and it's actually quite exciting. So I'll share the results here. So we do have a good about a little more than a third still
Mm.
digitizing on that level one, about 20% who've moved into some automation and another third that are using copilots and LLMs experimentally. And there's a small 5% who are starting to work with integrated workflows and governance.
But honestly, level one, two, three are sort of, interlinked. They are the same maturity level. You'll be doing something. It's very still manual on the side and digital on the side. So it's like intermingled. It's very, very experimental, both all three of them. And I
Mhm.
think that's why you'll see them being like this, right? The fourth one means that things are actually flowing quite seamlessly. And I think, to some extent, composable architectures, multiple apps means that you always have to carry something from one to the other. So I think people are not necessarily experiencing that right now in many companies, but good to see that there are some respondents who are at level four here, which is a high maturity level.
And where do you guys typically see the different companies that you're talking to? Where do you typically see that they fall?
Oh, no one has any spreadsheets anymore, right, Mass?
I wish. What we see in the market is that a lot of companies want finance to be closer to the business to provide insights rather than just compliance. So they want to lift themselves up so they get more automated to release time for things that's outside of compliance. And when we talk to the leaders, they all say, "Oh, we have finance business partnering, and we have FP&A." And when we start talking to them, we find out that they use 67% of their time creating data instead of analyzing and giving advice. Um, and this is where Les and I hope that we can move up the ladder to release time using AI and other automations. I'm really glad to see automations and RPA in this, because that was also be one of our or takeouts from this is that AI can be a huge help, but there's sometimes other tools that is better than AI for some solutions.
Hmm.
So really great starting point. This I think that it's good to see that people are working with the different environments. Um, but also interesting to see how can we combine them and how can we lift up the finance in controlling compliance, but maybe also create some insights.
There's logic to it. You don't move to level four or level five. You have to keep on doing level one to do level two. You have to keep on doing one and two to do three to some extent, and you have to do one, two, and three to do four. So it's not like you stop doing that. You'll keep on digitizing. I don't think we'll ever get over that to some extent. So, and I always say that the digitizing comes before digitalization and then before insights, right? But you have to do all of it. So that's why you keep adding to the workload and complexity as well, because it's not like you move and then you don't have to do the old stuff. You continuously have to do that.
Absolutely. It's all about the building blocks and
Hmm.
building up to make sure that you're consistent over time. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for engaging and for sharing those insights. It really helps set the scene for us to understand where you're at in your level of AI adoption within financial compliance and controlling. I'm just going to stop sharing the screen here real quick. Well, so the whole reason that we wanted to host this as well is because at Impero, we actually host quarterly product update webinars. And what we do is we really talk about what are the different things that people would like to see in our platform. And of course, AI has come up a ton this year. And so one of the things that we wanted to understand is that how many people want to have AI in the tool and who don't. And about 20% earlier this year when we were asking customers did not want to have AI in our tool at all. And that was quite interesting to us. And we were trying to figure out why. And some said it was their corporate policy right now that didn't allow it, but they actually, as individuals or as a team, wanted to adopt it. Others said they had a specific team working on how AI could be leveraged throughout their organization. And so they weren't ready or sure how to adopt it. And then there's others who were just very hesitant. We re-asked this question in our latest product update webinar, and things had actually shifted quite a bit. So we went from 20% being opposed to only 8%. That's a mess. Is this something that you've also seen just over the past year, like perceptions change, and what have you been telling these people who have been a little bit hesitant?
I think people in general is a fundamental thing for humans that we don't like change. Our brains doesn't really like changes, and we have seen it in the past when the computer came, the statement that computers will only be for the few and it will only be for the companies. There will be no personal computers. Then a few years later, everything's changed. When the internet came, it was like maybe this will be a bubble. It will only be used for a certain amount of time and then it's out. And I think that's what we experience every time we have something completely new that is rocking our world. I think that's the same with AI. And I think one of the reasons that AI has moved so fast is that it is so available. For the computer and the internet, it was still, what is this? How do we get access to it? It took some years for people to get their own computer, start using it. This, you just need to go online, find ChatGPT or whatever source you're looking at, and then you get started. So very quickly you can break down these barriers by using it yourself, adapt to the change and learn from it. I think that's why it's moved from 20 to 8% so fast.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think also, as you said, Mads, there's a novelty thing here, right? It's something new that came out, and we're sort of, and that's where the whole LLM market also started a couple of years ago. Was like everyone's like okay to test things out in small marketing things, right? Or write something, maybe make a customer service reply and see, oh, maybe that wasn't, we can always tweak that. But it sort of seemed like that was the easy places to start off instead of going directly into critical financial processes and financial statements that goes directly to shareholders, right? So maybe, let's just wait with that. So this change resistance definitely becomes and should also be bigger when criticality goes up, obviously, because there's bigger risks involved. But I also think that one of the changes that we've seen is that people have started realizing that these language models is not necessarily all about just writing poems and being humanistic, but also that, and this is just an aha thing for still a lot of people when I go do a lot of presentations, is that they're really good at coding. So, and coding, if you code, you can work with transactional, numerical, tabular data. And so it means that a language model can't just write poems or marketing copy. It can actually manipulate all of your transactional data as well. And that changes sort of the playing field a little bit. And I think that's starting to dawn on people and being accepted as, okay, there's a lot of things to do here as well. And then we're back to, automation 101, large volumes of transactional data, which is becoming more and more ripe for also LLM and AI automation.
Exactly. And I mean, I think the foundation is, and I think most people have accepted AI is going to fundamentally change the way that whether you work in financial compliance and controlling or another part of any business, it's going to change. And I think what I hear you guys saying is that within financial controlling and compliance and within CFO services, it's maybe been a little bit more conservative because you are working with key data. And the interesting thing is, and I'd love to get your guys' take on this, is how does human validation and verification come into play? Like, what are your thoughts on I mean, for example, with us, with risks and internal controls, the controls are all about making sure that someone is validating whatever's been submitted. And we're always big proponents of making sure that you always have a first and a second reviewer. How does that interplay with AI?
Well, when we did, I always back in the RPA days, I was always like a little bit, curious that people were seeing, we tried to insert something in SAP and you had a control come up saying like, are you sure you want to post this? And then people started automating that with RPA bots. So they started automating the controls with an automation, which is counterproductive to the reason this control was there. It was for you to validate that the input was correct, right? Now suddenly you had a bot clicking, yes, it's correct, and it didn't know. That happened a lot, right? And I just want to raise a point from back then, saying that whenever you automate a control of any kind, you need to control the automation. So that's where you need to sort of just be aware of what you're doing and make sure that it makes sense for you to then start controlling this automation at larger scale. Because if it doesn't make any sense to do. That's just the first point. Mads, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I think you talked about the complexity, Lasse. AI brings a lot of complexity, and with complexity, we also need to validate. We need to review, and I think that is what we need to do about AI. Right now, we are using a lot of time on creating data, and hopefully AI and other tools can help us create data. So we, instead of creating, we can validate, review, interpret, and advise. I think AI is moving fast, but the human validation will still be very valid, at least way ahead. So I think it's again moving up the ladder by using data instead of creating data. That's the key point in this. And we had automations has done a lot of good jobs, and then AI can maybe these areas we can get back to that on where to use AI, but AI can create boundaries between eliminate boundaries between where APA was limited. So it creates a whole new space for us to automate and be able to interpret data rather than creating.
But yeah. That's one to say you're spot on with the whole. It comes back to what we said. More output, maybe higher complexity. So the thing is now instead of doing just sample testing, that's a key point also in our ideas for financial and business controlling. Instead of doing just that, you can do more. What do you call? You can do more completeness in the population instead of completeness in the individual analysis. Now you can look at, instead of looking 10 out of 1,000, you can actually look at all 1,000 with AI, and that just means that you have to then spend time looking at the results of this output. So. And you also, before you had to look at the 10, but now you can actually look at the whole population, and that's a different mindset. It doesn't necessarily take off the workload, but it makes the work better and more thorough, and basically just gives a high output.
Exactly. I love the whole validate, review, interpret, and advise. You can do that part of the business better. It doesn't mean that you can't understand the process, though, beneath what you're doing, right? It's super important that you still understand what the process is so that you can make sure that it's still running and the automations are set up in a way that makes sense.
But Jasmine, it's like with the calculator, right? If you don't know what to expect from a calculator, you can't use it.
No, exactly. And you need to be thoughtful in the way that you're working. But let's dig into that a little bit, because I know you guys have done some really great examples into what you can use, and you've referenced it a couple times. Because one of the things that we hear all the time is that finance, tax, and controlling teams and compliance teams in general, they're just being asked to do more and more. And that goes back to the more output, right? How can they create more output because there are more regulations that they're being faced, or more requirements from their boards. So you've written this great catalog of ideas, and as I said, we're going to share it afterwards, so don't worry. But if teams were just to start with one or two of the ideas, what do you think would be a really good fit for people to start with?
When we're talking about AI, and that was one of the third things I learned about working with this, is AI should be used when we want structured and unstructured data. Structured data, we have a lot of other tools to work with, robotics, BI tools, and so on, because it's already structured. So I guess one of the key outputs working with our AI is make structures in unstructured data. And the reason why I say this, then one of our most simple examples in our catalog is master data. And saying this, I guess some people out there will say, well, isn't master data structured data? And yes, it is, but a lot of master data also includes letters, and words and letters is by definition unstructured data because it cannot put into a formula in the same way. And we are experiencing a lot of companies having issues with master data, and it's just affect the whole business from finance to legal to all across the functions, and also actually the business itself. So one of the easiest ways to get starting is to set up a structure where AI can analyze your master data. Do you have any master data that are doubled? Do you have any typing errors? And do you have any double spaces and so on? Because AI is a tool with an opinion. So it will actually throw out what they have analyzed. You should look into this. So instead of taking it one by one, you can have this overview using AI, and then you can start validate what is throwing at you. And then we have this case again, validating rather than just creating data and controlling. And I'm a finance professional myself. A lot of finance guys out there will say, well, how about the completeness? In finance, we always want completeness. And how about AI hallucinating and so on?
Be careful what you say now, Mads. This is your holy reputation at stake.
I know, but I think we should change our minds in that terms, stating if I can get to 90%
Yeah.
of the data, and I can start actually validating that, analyzing that, instead of taking samples, instead of taking it line by line, how much can I actually accomplish, knowing that I may have 5 or 10% that is incorrect.
And we recently did a project, right? And we've done lots of these projects. Just the recent experience was so neat for me because I was helping a colleague also who was working interim at a client, helping them with a new payroll system, and we had to do, they do these flip pay slips task, just flipping them over and over, right, to see how they compare from the old system to the new system. And we set up an AI solution for that. Just scanned the first one and found the counterpart, and then said where are the discrepancies, and it did hallucinate, but it actually hallucinated in a very structured form as well. So she could see where it had issues and where it didn't, and then she could sort of account for those outliers. It was very easy. She said, and this was the great part, getting capital letters back from her saying this has made it so much easier. I now have an overview of all 1,000 payslips really neatly in an Excel sheet, and I can see where the discrepancies are, and I can also see where it has made some structured, some repeated faults. So the baseline was just so much better than sitting there flipping and reading, and I just think that having that mindset, instead saying that, okay, I know there will be some problems here, but what I need to do here is get, a holistic overview kind of, is this totally unacceptable before we then go into, we can always go nitty-gritty details, but the whole, bulk view of things, AI can do a lot on that. And let's face it, that's what we want to do on so many things. If you look at 10 invoices and see if they've overcharged you, it doesn't make any sense if you receive 10,000 invoices a month. If you look at all 10,000, you find 90% where, that's so just a value here, right? That this is money. This is not just, a control to say now we've done the control. It's actually the money you are maybe paying out or not getting in that you could pay out or get in. And one of the cases I love the most is this whole, look at something like going to maybe more business control and looking at the work that we're doing at clients. So, if you're a company that has, service workers of some kind, and you have a contract with a real big client, and the service workers are supposed to do things. You get orders in and you quickly dispatch them to the worker so they quickly fix the issue. Who is making this control that you're actually performing things that are also in the contract? Is any of the dispatchers reading the contract as they're sitting there? Are any of the workers even aware there is a contract? Can they read it? What kind of people are out there on the front line? And having AI able to sort of translate and interpret that contract into actual settings or into actual work orders or tasks to be done means that you can do controlling live. You don't have to do it on things we couldn't do it on before. And from unstructured data, as Matt said, the contract to the very structured, maybe also unstructured work order or the invoice or whatever, right? Small idea is also, what about, your due dates on your invoices? That's cash flow. If you've agreed 3 months plus one, which a lot of big enterprises do, but the vendor always sends 8 days. That's money lost if you pay that invoice, right? It's just cash flow. So
Exactly. So it
sometimes
saves
it's
you.
simple.
Yeah, so it saves you time, and then you can also get into more different areas that you can actually do the controlling. But another thing that I know we also talked about is flipping the mindset. So you've just described two great different scenarios that people can start with, looking at master data and looking, for example, at payroll slips. But one of the things as well is that a lot of people are like, oh, can I use AI to automate this one small process? When we were talking before, another thing that you said that you guys preach a lot is focusing more on outcomes, like bigger outcomes. For example, ensuring cash flow is optimized. What is the mindset that you often meet out in the market right now? And what is the shift that's happening right now when it comes to AI?
Well, a lot of people looking at what can AI do? Can I looking at the AI tool, looking at the AI suite or the subscription? I mean, right now, my key message really is that focus, expect things to be solvable. So
Yeah.
what do you want to achieve? What are your pain points? What are your challenges? Expect it to be solvable. And it's easier to solve AI. If you don't need AI to do it, you can code an app quicker now than you ever could before. So things are just so much more solvable than they have ever been before. And
Mhm.
this is a change of mindset. And then people are like, oh, let's do the new things we've never done before. Yeah, or maybe just do whatever you do deeper, better, and more thorough, right? Let's start there maybe. Let's maybe get rid of the things we couldn't do and start doing that as well. Right.
I think one of my take is that the be ambitious with
Mhm.
AI, because right now a lot of people are using AI either to translate their emails, make a draft for their LinkedIn, or cooking recipes, or how I'm going to Rome. What should I see in Rome based on this and this? So
Yeah.
we right now we are using it a bit for our personal assistant, both work-wise and in private.
Mhm.
Um, I think we should start working with AI, creating insights and knowledge that we didn't have before. I think that is where I really see the potential for AI to structure so many unstructured data that we can
Mhm.
actually make data-driven decisions,
Yeah.
both within finance, but also for the commercial side. Um, and a lot of this, of course, is for the commercial side, but it also have an impact on. I know Imperial is very much about compliance,
Mhm.
but all of this also really has an impact on compliance thing. If we can analyze all these contractual data, we get
Mhm.
a more realistic view of what should we accrue for in terms of our liabilities. What liabilities should we have in terms of our contracts? What assets should we recognize based on our contracts? So if both from a reporting perspective, but also from a commercial perspective, we can create insights that we didn't have before. And that's where I really see the value. But that also means that we need to have a structured approach to it, because
Yeah.
right now everyone is using it from themselves and on their own computer and their own task. We need to take it a bit up in a more transformation layer, so we make work streams across finance or across businesses to get the full value.
And
Yeah.
speaking of structure, one of the things I'm just pulling up the screen here again is in the catalog, you guys do separate things out into 3 layers. And Les, I'll let you answer quickly, but if you guys want to dig into a little bit as well of why you separate out your catalog of ideas into this data automation, artificial intelligence, and human layer and how they interact.
So the thing is, I think the reason why we did that is we could obviously just say artificial intelligence and human, because in the end, there's always a human side of things. We are the ones demanding, we are the ones evaluating who want things done. So there'll always be a human side to any kind of technology. Just very basics, put it out there, right? But the reason that we have the data and automation thing as well is that there is a and for AI specifically right now as well, there's the growing realization, which in the market, that we need grounded AI. It's not something that's growing on me. I've been relatively aware of this for a long time, but you need to have the right data around it, and you need to have the right scaffolding around it. So people can't just expect an AI to, write an email to my boss and then it'd be like, who's your boss? What's your purpose? What do you do? What are your role? You need to give it that kind of data and this scaffolding, grounding to do things reliably. And that's why data and automation comes in as a natural lane to say, how does that support artificial intelligence? And data and automation, basically, that's just, non-LLM structured automation techniques, right? Like we used to do IT the last 70 years. And then you have these LLMs who can sort of confabulate a little bit or find, things that are not necessarily set in stone in a table. And so I, interpret things, translate things, contextualize it in a different way. So that's why these lanes make sense in that way, because you need to get the data and you need to do that with something else maybe than AI, or have AI ask for it. Of course, there's gray layers everywhere. Sorry, I'm almost ruining my own argument here. But you need to have this kind of, make things available to it so that it can make better data and better decisions available to you. Oh, that
But
was a
by
nice
making
description.
things available, isn't there? I know we talked a little bit about a dilemma before of from like a compliance perspective with like data being uploaded. What are you guys meeting in the market there? How are you convincing CFOs to ensure that they're putting their data into these systems so that you can have better output? Because there's a lot of ethics concerns as well out there in the market sometimes.
Well, most people are already on some kind of cloud platform or using some kind of Azure or something like that. Or and if you do that, they most of them have they all have suites for these LLMs where you can use them in a private mode. So you just use them on consumption basis, right? And when we start speaking about it that way and using it that way, they are more acceptable. So, but that's also for creating custom solutions, right? The problem is when you start looking at, and maybe this is also for Impero, right? Is saying that if you start integrating some AI tool, you're adding an AI tool that is not necessarily what they would have chosen in their cloud or with their subscription or whatever, and that's what's creating the new dilemma of shadow AI, where every tool has an AI built into it, and can you even control what's going on there because you have 500 different small apps in your enterprise, right? And employees are also using 500 different AI tools, right? So this whole shadow AI is a really big focus area for a lot of companies, especially as you go into more compliance. And of course, this is a compliance discussion as well, but the higher regulatory compliance frameworks that govern specific industries, the more strict they are also on these things, and shadow AI become a much bigger issue in those cases as well. So this will mean some kind of asymmetric adoption in the market as well. That some will be able to move fast, some will not be able to move as fast because they have more requirements on confidentiality.
Yeah, I can see in my notes I had written down the paradox of controlling and compliance. And I'm sure even if we don't have AI built into our platform, it is something we are exploring right now and stay tuned for more on that. But the interesting thing is I'm sure kind of like both of you talked about people who are using our tool and are sitting in finance and controlling and compliance teams are probably sitting and using it on the side and then using whatever the output is there and putting it into our tool. So it's
Mm,
a little bit the chicken or the egg, right? Uh,
yeah. So should you decide or should they decide what to use, right? That's the problem, right? Isn't it? But at the same time, everyone's like looking at Impero probably going like, why don't you have AI? Give me some AI. Uh, it's a conundrum. I can understand that, especially when you're a compliance tool as well.
So there's a lot of discussion as well about tech platforms, and not only ours, right? We're just one risk and control platform in the whole governance, risk, and compliance space. Also, we play within the tax technology space. There's a ton of tools out there, and as I said at the start of the call, we were at a big expo a couple weeks ago, and I think every single tool out there is talking about AI in some way, shape, or form. But one of the other questions that we got a lot, and that maybe this is something where we need to educate people who are working within financial compliance and controlling, is that we were getting asked, like, what data are you using to train the AI models? And is this something that you also hear? I know you guys did a workshop last week with a bunch of different financial professionals as well. Is this something you also hear?
Well, I'll answer this, Mass. Is that okay? Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah, of course.
but because no, but because then it gets very into AI, right? The thing is that a lot of people think that we're training. The word training is used a lot. So well, how do we train our AI? We will train an AI for you. We also have, I hear that a lot, but the reality is most people are configuring it. Prompt engineering is configuration, context engineering is configuration. The P in GPT means pre-trained, right? So ChatGPT is a pre-trained transformer model. So it has already been trained on some data. So we don't retrain it, we just give it enough to answer contextually correct. And the
Yeah.
funny thing is that with this whole training thing is they've seen so many things, these models, that they are sort of like one big supply chain of smaller AI models. So if you manage to focus them with a good prompt, a good data, you'll get a really good output because then it answers on a specific topic that it understands really, really, really well. Um, I also saw some weird studies the other day saying that, oh, but if we remove all the bad code, GitHub code, all the bad examples from the training data for the models, they will get better. But the problem is if you remove all the bad things from the training data, they don't know what is bad because they
Yeah.
also see that in sort of a probability. uh, so how these models function internally, if that's also part of your question, Jasmine, is really still something people are discussing. It's not doesn't. I know even Anthropic is doing a lot of studies on how an LLM works internally, how the brain of an LLM works. Um, but really, what most people should be focused on is not that, but just focus on saying that how can we configure it to make sure it's doing what we want it to do over and over and over by giving it the right data and the right prompt and the right context, so it can be reliable in a business process, which is a completely different thing than a
Yeah.
creative brainstorming LLM you have for your personal productivity.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it definitely makes sense, right? You can't know what good looks like without bad looking, or get
No,
an example of what bad looks like. And it's the same whether you're training a new team member, right? You need to teach them what bad looks like, and you need to put the same thought into AI as well.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but talking about AI, I also just want to make sure that we talk about our, because people and humans are part of this as well, and the skill set that we need in the future is going to be very relevant. And Mass, you're the finance guy, so maybe you can jump into a little bit about this, because I was looking into job descriptions for people within financial controlling and compliance, and I do see like hints of AI where they're saying, "Oh, we're implementing an AI first finance suite and ERP system." But what about AI literacy? Is that something that you think the finance people need to know in the future for the job market? Or will there be someone who is an AI person that they can contact internally at their company? Because the job market is going to change with this, but how much does it need to change? Uh, what do you think?
I think it's very much whether you're on or off the train.
Yeah.
Train is moving very fast, and if you don't start using AI, you will be behind at some point. But I think there's a very clear variation between if you are AI savvy, if you know the background,
Mhm.
or if you are able to use AI in a finance context or in the context you're working. So I think
Mhm.
it will be a bit like we're having IT today. We can have an AI expert in the company that we can consult if we have issues. But
Mhm.
being able to use, how can I use AI? When should I use AI? When should I not use AI? And
Mhm.
and and make that an everyday tool like Excel, like PowerPoint, like your email. I think it will be like that in the future once it's fully implemented in companies. But you don't need to know, as Lasse know, how it works behind the scenes and read studies of how LLM models is working. I think that will still be quite specialized.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. I really need to know that, Master. But thank you. But no, but you're completely right. I think what you're saying is basically you need to make sure you know how to use the output that an LLM is producing, not necessarily configure an AI. So if you don't know how to use it, if you don't trust what it's doing, if you don't have any clue, if you haven't experimented with it and gotten an
Mhm.
idea about what it means when it's hallucinating, how will you react when you see an hallucination, right?
Yeah.
I think that's something that should be very clear. You need to start working on this. You don't need to be an expert, but you need to know what can you expect when these machines take over, and what can you expect when they come into your Business Central or your SAP or your Impero. You need to have an idea about that, right?
Yeah.
I always say that you don't win by doing AI because everyone has access to the same AI. Gemini 3 came out the other day. Everyone has access to it immediately. You don't. There's like a couple of weeks where some special people have special access. So you don't win by doing it because it's commodity, but you will lose if you're not looking at it and if you're not aware of how you evaluate and use the output that's producing for something good. And I think that should be very clear right now in 2025.
Definitely. And probably also being able to communicate to whoever that AI person is that you're working with, these are the outcomes that I want in my area of business because it will help impact XYZ so that I can better, what was it, interpret,
Mm.
review, and advise. So
But
that's,
AI should be in the end, it should be invisible, right? Something that happens in the background, invisible for us, and that's why having this crazy focus on it is like let's instead of looking at the fire, let's look at what the steam engine ends up producing at the end, right? That's an interesting part. No one people ride the train, they don't care about how the engine works in the end, right? In the beginning, they do. And I think that's the future. And that's also something that should be. And I don't have the full answer for that, but there's something here that's instructive as to how we prepare for it as professionals as well. That what will happen when this is invisible tech in 3 years? Will it make sense, all the AI courses you've taken? Maybe it will, but maybe it won't. I don't have the answer, right?
We'll
And in
probably
the
even look
meantime,
back.
I'll be selling you a lot of courses on training AI.
I was going
Anyway,
to say, we'll probably even look back at this conversation and laugh in 3 years and be like, why were we even discussing that? This is just a natural part of our day to day now. So we'll
yeah. Now I did the disclaimer part. Sorry, I don't know. But, the future is unclear. I can't even see. It's foggy. It's
Exactly. Well,
snowy and foggy.
I want to make sure we have enough time for questions as well. So before we jump into that, I did ask you each, like, what's your one piece of advice for those who want to explore working with AI more next year? Because I'm sure that's on a lot of people's like annual performance plans or KPIs for next year. So what's your one piece of advice? Mess, you want to go first?
Yes, you said one. I have two, but they are combined.
All right.
I think one, start using it, start playing with it, getting to know how AI is working, so it won't be foreign for you in the
Mm,
future, and you have seen it and you have done the mistakes, and when prompting it, you get the outcome. So start using it just for
Mhm.
yourself, either in private or as a business person. And the second thing I would recommend is start to have brainstorms in your department on how can AI help us achieve our goals in finance, in compliance, in business controlling. What are we trying to achieve, and how can AI help us achieve that goal in a structured way, and not just everyone using AI as a personal assistant?
Fair points. Fair points. And that's it.
And I'd like to say, that you said KPIs, and I want to say, start with the KPI. Maybe that sounds like weird because everyone's like, oh, explorative, the future is going to look like today. But, the future is I always made with steps from where you're standing today. So if you can't see the outcome today, how can you even evaluate if it's doing anything good? So I'd say, and that will be most companies, start out where you can see the value and then explore from there and see how it explodes from there. It's okay that things are incremental because that means we're not burning down everything, right? And revolutionizing it and putting pitchforks and stuff. And bad things happen in revolutions as well, right? And I think there's God maybe made the world in 7 days, but he didn't have an installed legacy base. And the thing is, the whole world out there has an installed legacy base. It takes time to integrate new technology into it. I think that's okay to say as well, while saying get a move on. But there's also, you have time, but you have to start, right? And then I'd just like to say, because Amas said that earlier, that it's creating more data. And I think that's super interesting. Focus on how can we make more data available and accessible for us to use to make better decisions. Because in the end, better decisions is what drives businesses forward. And that's what you want to create a better basis for. So I just want to sort of underscore that one as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great insights, and hopefully something that people will take away after today as well. Well, let's jump into, I just have one last poll before we jump into questions. And I think it's actually a very good, like, reflective question based off or after your guys' advice into how people can get started. And so what's stopping you today, right? Is it because of data quality or unstructured data? Though I think Les and Mess, you guys have both made really, really good points as to why AI can actually be used to help you more quickly use that unstructured data.
It doesn't mean that the unstructured data is not a problem, but it just means that it can help you fix it. But then it will,
Exactly.
but because if you feel, oh, this is a big discussion, but not a
It's
day.
the incremental, but I get what you mean, right? You can
It's
use
just
it
fractals,
to
right, of
structure and then
unstructured.
you fill
Anyway,
on it.
I just keeps a layer. It's like a babushka doll or something like that.
Exactly. Lack of governance or clear rules, hard to find use cases. That's what the catalog is for. Uncertainty about accuracy or hallucinations, or lack of time or skills to experiment. And I'm just going to close out right away and share because I can already see the overwhelming is lack of times or skills to experiment. But
I love that. Sorry, I love it because I, back when I did when we did a lot of RPA, we always taught a lot of people how to use AI and use RPA tools, right? Which is cool because that gives ideation things, right? So expect good ideas. But the dream was that the thing we call citizen developers, right? Everyone could code, everyone could build their own automation. But in the end, they always they never had time. The weirdest thing is that, IT professionals like, oh, let's offload some of these IT things onto controllers. But, controllers are also quite busy people. I think that respect is important. But as Matt said, know how it works. How can you ideate with it? How can you use it? That's what you need to do. You don't need to know how to configure it. Still expect someone else to do that, right? So I'd really like that.
And you're part of your business best. So I think adopting Matt's idea of like, let's book a brainstorm team or a brainstorm meeting for our team and talk about how we can use AI to meet our objectives, that's probably a great way to go about it as well. Because then that lack of time is not only on you, it's a team effort to try to figure out how you can move forward using AI.
Mm.
And it's
Um,
quite a complex, because one of the main outcomes of AI is to release time, and now we don't have time to experiment and actually to use it.
Yes.
So that's one of the main reasons that we need to bring this up, not just on your own desk, but on decision level, so we can also invest in releasing time for advising, for reviewing, for monitoring. So it's also an investment in the team and in management, and not just that everyone needs to find time to work with.
Jasmine, a lot of people are answering stupid emails and from inboxes all the time about expenses or whatever, right? Really expensive, smart, insightful, experienced, seasoned controllers are sitting there answering questions about the missing receipt forms or something like that. You can automate that. You have the policies. You can definitely automate that response so you can get more time to learn more about AI. So AI can
Definitely.
help you as well. It's not just adding complexity for more, but there's definitely also some really, there's some ripe fruits right here, right in front of you.
Absolutely, right? With any new technology adoption, there's always some low-hanging fruit that you're like, just
Yes.
for it. So we have some great questions that are coming in. And the first one is about how will auditors go about their audits in the future? This person has automated some of their ESG, but their auditors cannot and will not look at the code, and that makes their audits very difficult. What are your thoughts on that?
Interesting. I have an audit background, so I can put myself
Be
in
careful
in
again,
that
Mads.
position. Yeah, be careful again.
Staking his reputation here.
I think for auditors, this is a development as for everyone else.
Yeah.
We are using a lot of tools. We are changing systems. We are changing RP systems. And that's how business works. And that will also be part of auditors reviewing how are they reviewing the business using the tools that the companies are using. I know a lot of audit firms is using AI themselves regarding samples and analytical reviews. So I think what comes first, and for the auditors to state to the business that you cannot use AI to structure your unstructured data, I think that will not be the case. So I guess they are adapting as much as the business are, and as we all are.
Mm. And it's also it is also in the IT world. We're used to being able to evaluate output from machine learning models or doing accurate testing. LLMs are this mystery box, black box. We don't no one knows why they come, because there's so much stochasticism built into them, how they are able to produce language that fits what we're trying to ask them, right? So it's I understand why they say we can't audit the system, because it's no one can. But I think that's not an excuse for not trying to reinvent how we're doing this. And as far as I know, auditors, Matt, you must correct me, right? I can say anything because I'm not an auditor, but they have these working papers, and basically if you can describe the process and how you're using it in the working paper, you can sort of find a way to do it anyway, right? But and probably also with a model like that. After all, you use humans, right? And who can say that this human viewed it the right way? So now I did that anthropomorphization thing. I hate to do that. Anyway, but Mass, isn't that right? You could update that and find a way to incorporate it.
Yes, they need to up their working workarounds and how the process are as well as the business are.
Mm.
And I think it fits really nicely into another question we have, which is that someone said I have a strong view that no technology can be implemented effectively without solid governance. We cannot apply an AI layer on top of broken processes and expect transformation to work. What is our opinion on that? I think
Yeah, but
we've been,
yeah, but I completely agree. You need to
yeah,
know what you're doing. You can't automate what you don't understand. I always say that, but and you can't gain benefits from something you can't govern. So I actually very much agree with it. But the problem is that it often becomes a purity discussion. So if we don't have everything governed and under control, we can do nothing. And you shouldn't do that. One of my favorite poems, writers, is called E.P. Jacobsen. He wrote a book called Nils Lyne, where they speak about the atheism. Oh, this is a detour. Sorry about that. But where they say, you can't have one needle's eye of the needle for all the camels in the world. Someone says in that, and I think that we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't create a small needle for all the camels. We should make sure that the camel can pass through the gate and be a little bit flexible, but also expect that we will be building gates, right? Does that make sense? Does it make sense? Sorry about the image I
no, but
chose.
it doesn't. I think it goes back to the auditors, right? The auditors need to understand the process. The hesitation there is probably because if they don't understand the process to begin with, then
Yeah.
they're not going to trust whether that's AI or other technology. If they don't understand how the technology works, then they're hesitant to audit that.
Yeah, but if you say, I want to know all of the different outcomes that could possibly happen from this LLM, then you will never, ever, ever get started, right? So there's this, the practicality, the pragmatism. I think pragmatism is a key word in generative AI and LLM work, right? Basically.
And it is a thing about the finance mindset. We want complete control, end-to-end control over data. I know, Lasse, before you work with AI, you worked a lot with BI, and when you implemented BI, you will always ask, "Can I see the data behind?" So you wanted a good-looking dashboard where you can make decision on, but finance people want to see how is the BI generated.
This is the funniest thing. Every finance person does that, right? Nice BI report, and then they click see the data.
And now we're reaching a point where I guess most finance people are accepting BI. That's a useful tool to make decisions and to get a quick overview. And I think the same will come to AI once we start working with it, once we see the outcomes, what's the mistakes, what's the benefits.
But you still, Mass, don't you? Still show me the data behind the dashboard, don't you?
I still have some of the completeness issues, yes.
I think people still want to double click in and
Yes,
have a look,
yes.
right? Let's be real. Let's be real. I do want to squeeze one quick question in for the very end, and it is, how can AI be used to validate AI generated output? Might be a very big question, but let's squeeze it in.
No,
That's you.
this is the pragmatism again, right? So
Yeah.
I think some studies showed last year, and correct me, maybe I'm not quoting them correctly, but there's something like if you just had an extra LLM check the output of the first one, you can reduce hallucinations up to 70%. And then the more change you put that way, the better, right? Because they answer on a bell curve somewhere, right? But if you ask it again, it will get close to what's actually the right answer to it. Depends also if you're asking the right question, giving it the right data to answer the question correctly, of course, how good you can get on the most probable, the best answer, right? But just an example. When we build things, we sometimes ask the AI to fetch some data from a document, and then it gets a response back in the background saying that here's the data. But sometimes it gets an empty response back saying I couldn't find anything. But the LLM might still blah 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 because it's a mansplainer GPT. I sometimes call it that. So we'll just say whatever blah 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 blah. But then what we do then, we ask another AI just saying like, does this response fit with what was in the fetch? And then we'll say, no, the fetch was empty. So it'll just answer yes or no. No, it doesn't fit. And then we can say, this is a false answer, and then, so you can do lots of things that way. And that works quite well to an extent. So pragmatism.
All right. Well, we have some more questions. We don't have, but we're running out of time. So I think we'll try to follow up with those who have additional questions. I'm also just launching a quick poll while we're going. If you'd like to hear more about Impero, that's probably popped up on your screen. But I also just, again, want to make a little shout out for the great catalog of ideas regarding value creation for financial and business controlling within AI that we're going to send out as well as Les's podcast, The Only Constant. I listened to a couple episodes ahead of this. I can highly recommend it myself to all of you, but you'll get an email with that. if you're new and you don't know Impero yet, I just wanted to also add a little bit of information that we have some stuff on our help center. We have our newsletter, but we'll send those out. And this is the poll that's running. And I just want to say a really, really, really big thank you to you, Lessa, and to you, Mess, for joining and sharing all your knowledge today. It's been so incredibly insightful, even for myself, because I'm sure as we look back in 3 years or even just 1 year from now, it's going to be a completely different perspective on AI adoption. So
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
thank you. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.